So news of the case reaches Europe in May 1624, and the case has remained controversial for almost 400 years since then. Now, across this very long period, scholars have split along national grounds. So Dutch scholars are absolutely insistent that there was some sort of plot. They do argue that the legal proceedings were irregular, that there were problems with the legal proceedings, but they're absolutely convinced that there was some sort of plot, and hence the legal proceedings were fundamentally justified. Now, English scholars have taken a completely opposite viewpoint. They have argued the legal proceedings were fundamentally unjustified, and in fact that Amboina constitutes little more than judicial murder. Now, I've worked on this case for about a decade, and I've become increasingly convinced that we shouldn't simply be asking what happened, but why it actually happened. And it's the second question that I think is indispensable to understanding the Amboina incident. So it's very difficult with the available sources to know exactly what happened on Amboina, whether there was a plot, whether there wasn't a plot. But it's a very interesting question as to why the Dutch acted in this way. English writers, when they talk about Amboina, they just constantly represent Amboina as a position of immense Dutch confidence, of immense Dutch strength. But if you actually look at the Dutch records and you go through what's actually been written by Dutch officials who are posted on this island, you see this terrible, overwhelming sense of fear. And this is absolutely central, absolutely key to understanding the Amboina incident, that in fact the Dutch are constantly aware, constantly fearful of perils that they see lurking all around them. And so when the Dutch moved to arrest the Japanese mercenaries, when they moved to arrest and interrogate the English merchants, they're really operating not on the basis of Dutch confidence or Dutch East India Company power. They're really responding to this terrible sense of fear, this overwhelming sense of insecurity. Amboina is unique in the history of Dutch East India Company expansion in Asia. This is the first time you see English merchants being brought and subjected to Dutch justice. Now, Dutch justice in this period is, and this must absolutely be pointed out, extremely brutal. So the Dutch regularly conduct conspiracy trials in places like Amboina, which often have horrific consequences, pilling tens or even hundreds of people into the interrogation chamber, and often resulting in mass executions. But the Amboina incident is very different because the Dutch Republic and England are very close allies in this period. And there is essentially a red line that is not to be crossed. And this is why the case sparks such tremendous outrage in Europe, because English officials look at this and they can't understand why the Dutch have behaved so recklessly. There's always a moment in which the case could have been stopped, in which it could have been halted, in which the defendants could have been reprieved, for example. But in fact, the Dutch keep pushing ahead and ahead. And I think the key thing to understanding this case is understanding this overwhelming sense of paranoia that is driving Dutch action in this period. And it's this overwhelming sense of paranoia that provides the crucial backdrop to the Amboina incident.